which one is better and which one is worse. But the reality is, although they share a few similarities, alcohol and THC affect your physiology in very different ways. So today, with the help of the bodies in the lab, we're going to compare alcohol and THC head to head. We'll break down how each one gets absorbed, what they do to your brain and other organs, why one can cause blackouts while the other gives the munchies. And yes, we'll also get into the negative effects of each, including addiction and even cancer risk. It's going to be a mind-altering one. So let's jump into this anatomical and physiological awesomeness. Also known as ethanol, is a small molecule that can move easily through both the watery environments of your body and across cell membranes, which allows it to spread quickly throughout your bloodstream and into your brain. THC, short for tetrahydrocannabinol, is highly fat soluble, which means it tends to accumulate in fatty tissues, including the brain, and sticks around much longer. But one of the biggest differences between these two substances starts with how they enter your body. When you drink alcohol, it travels down the esophagus and into the stomach, where about 10 to 20% of that alcohol is absorbed directly through the stomach lining that you can see here. The rest moves into the small intestine, where most of the absorption occurs. If your stomach is empty, your blood alcohol levels can peak in about 30 to 60 minutes. If you've eaten, especially fats or proteins, that process slows down and can take closer to 1 to 3 hours. THC works differently because it depends on how you bring it into the body. If it's inhaled, it moves from the lungs and into the bloodstream within minutes. But if it's eaten, like with an edible, it has to go through the digestive tract and then to the liver before entering circulation, which makes the onset much slower. And you'll often hear that edibles don't just take longer to kick in, they also tend to hit harder and last longer. One of the main reasons for this is that in the liver, THC is converted into a compound called 11-hydroxy-THC, which actually is more potent and contributes to those stronger, longer-lasting effects. Whereas if you inhale it, it doesn't go directly to your liver. It can pass through multiple tissues before eventually getting there. So already we see a key difference. Alcohol has a single, fairly predictable route of absorption, while THC is highly route dependent and can be much more prolonged, especially when consumed as an edible. Now, once these substances enter your bloodstream, they both make their way to your brain. But what they do once they get there is very different. Alcohol is what we call a central nervous system depressant. It enhances the effects of GABA, which is an inhibitory neurotransmitter, and at the same time suppresses glutamate, which is excitatory. So the overall result is that brain activity slows down. In the prefrontal cortex, this leads to decreased judgment and impulse control, which is why people often say and do things with alcohol that they might not normally do. In the hippocampus, it disrupts memory formation. In the cerebellum, it affects coordination and balance. And at higher doses, alcohol can even begin to suppress the brainstem, which controls breathing and heart rate. And this is what can make alcohol poisoning so dangerous. THC, on the other hand, works through your endocannabinoid system. It binds to CB1 receptors located throughout the brain and alters how neurons communicate with each other. Instead of broadly slowing everything down, it changes how signals are processed and transmitted. In the hypothalamus, which you can see here, it alters how hunger signals are regulated, which contributes to the classic munchies. In other areas of the brain, it influences dopamine and endorphin pathways, which can lead to relaxation or euphoria. But in some individuals, it can lead to anxiety or even paranoia. So a way you can think about this is that alcohol turns down the volume of the brain, while THC changes the signal itself. Now, even though both of these substances affect the brain, the way they impact memory and cognition feels very different in real life. With alcohol, as doses increase, the brain can actually lose the ability to form new memories altogether. This is what leads to blackouts, where a person may be awake, talking and interacting, but later has no memory of what happened. THC doesn't shut memory formation down in the same way, but it does alter or interfere with how information is processed and organized. This can make it harder to focus, follow conversations, or keep track of what you were just thinking about. So people often describe things like losing their train of thought, forgetting what they were about to say, or feeling mentally foggy. So the key distinction here is that alcohol can suppress memory formation, while THC tends to distort cognitive processing. Now, if we zoom out from the brain and look at the rest of the body, both of these substances affect your cardiovascular system, but not in the exact same way. Alcohol causes your blood vessels to dilate, which can temporarily lower your blood pressure. In response, your body may increase your heart rate slightly to help maintain circulation. THC also causes vasodilation, but it tends to produce a more noticeable and consistent increase in heart rate, which is why some people become very aware of their heartbeat shortly after using it. And this helps explain one of the most recognizable effects of THC, red eyes. When the small blood vessels in your eyes dilate, more blood flows through them, giving that classic red appearance. Now, technically, alcohol can also cause some dilation of blood vessels in the eyes, but it's usually much less noticeable. THC has a more direct effect on receptors in the eye, which makes that redness much more pronounced and consistent. Then there's dry mouth. That's largely an effect of THC. Your salivary glands, one of which you can see on this sagittal head dissection, contain cannabinoid receptors. And when THC binds to them, it reduces saliva production. So that dry mouth feeling isn't just dehydration, it's your salivary glands actually producing less saliva. And that naturally leads us into appetite. As we already mentioned, THC has a direct effect on how your brain regulates hunger. It interacts with areas of the brain that are involved with hunger, such as the hypothalamus. And it alters normal satiety signaling, essentially making food seem more rewarding and harder to resist. That's why people often experience the classic munchies, where they feel hungry even if they've recently eaten. Alcohol can increase appetite, but the mechanism is different. Instead of directly driving hunger signals, alcohol tends to lower inhibitions. So people may eat more, not necessarily because they're physiologically hungry, but because they care less about how much they're eating or what they're eating. So while both substances can lead to increased food intake, THC is more likely to drive a true increase in hunger signaling, whereas alcohol is more like, meh, I guess I'll eat this. And with all this talk about certain substances altering brain physiology, let's talk about some other substances that can help the brain perform at its best. Now, it's not really a secret that creatine can improve exercise performance, but more and more research is showing that higher doses of creatine can help improve cognitive function, mental fatigue, and even sleep deprivation. Something else that is essential for brain function is electrolytes. Like, I'll often ask my students how they think neurons conduct electrical impulses, and the answer is they use electrolytes to create charge gradients. And so electrolyte balance and hydration are essential for proper neuron function. And this is where Create's new daily stack comes in. This daily stack combines their creatine gummies with their creatine and electrolyte mix into one system, giving you two different formats that make it easy to stay consistent. You can mix a stick pack in the morning for hydration and energy support, which gives you 5 grams of creatine plus the electrolytes. And then what I like to do is use the gummies later in the day, specifically right after a workout. And I do this for 2 reasons. 1, I get 5 more grams of creatine, and 2, the gummies also have some carbohydrates, which can help contribute to replenishing the glycogen stores that I just depleted during the workout. And with how simple this stack is, it is easy to stay consistent. Because with creatine, taking it regularly is what actually matters, so that you can build up your creatine stores in your cells. And having multiple formats that are travel ready, easy to take, and require no prep makes it a lot easier to not miss a day.